hit the alarm clock and the radio turns on. August 6th, 1945. It's a semi-bright Monday morning. You are Susumu Hashimoto, a factory worker living in the port city of Hiroshima, the Nakajima Homachi precinct. Your normal routine ensues. Face wash, breakfast, change, step outside. As you begin to walk down the street, there seems to be no one on the Motoyasu Hashi Bridge. Definitely the best route for work. As you step onto it, it seems more sturdy than usual. Looking to your left, you see the Aioi Hashi Bridge, about 300 meters away. As you get off the bridge, you note the time. 8:02 a.m. Late. You start to quicken your tempo. You need to get to the factory now, or your boss will string you up by the legs himself. Just as you get off the bridge, a glint of sunlight bounced off from something high in the sky. It was so bright that it caught your attention. As you look up, you see a small, dark object falling. It's moving at such a speed that it's hard to tell, but it can't be any higher than what, 1,200 meters?
Wait, no, this can't be. Here? Now? They wouldn't. From here and not Kagoshima or Wakanai? Run. I can run. I can get away. It's still a while away. I can get away. I can.
You turn your back and start to stagger away. Most people haven't noticed a shell rocketing towards the ground. It's at this moment that time starts to slow down. Everything starts to tick at a less rapid rate.
I can still get away. I can. Any second. Any second. I have to get away.
Since the turn of the 20th century, humans have tampered with the atom. Einstein's theories opened our eyes to a new world of theoretical physics, which allowed users to uncover the secrets of atomic energy. But as history has shown us before through people like Alfred Nobel, finding something that is supposed to help can quickly morph into something meant to harm others. Atomic power is no different, and in 1939, when the Manhattan Project started, the name of atomic energy was forever changed to a name of death and destruction. This National History Day project will examine the atomic attacks on Japan at the end of World War II and the diplomatic procedures that followed between the United States and Japan that led to a new era. The war seemed to be coming to a close in the West. Mussolini had been executed, Hitler had committed suicide in a sealed bunker, and the Nazis were being driven out of places like Poland and France by June of 1945. The same could not be said, however, about the East. Skirmishes between the Japanese and US were still commonplace. Horrid acts were carried out in Japanese internment camps that were still open in America, and POW camps run by the Japanese were still just as brutal as concentration camps in Germany. The ecstasy of joining the war had left America as soon as it had started, and by that time the country was tired of what seemed to be a never-ending war. And to add on to that, the Americans had a special grudge against the Japanese for the bombing of Pearl Harbor a few years prior in 1941. All of these tensions had boiled up in both the American and Japanese people. The most terrifying thought for the people from both nations was a land invasion, and for the Japanese, that nightmare was becoming more and more of a reality. The Americans were making their way through the Pacific, island jumping, straight towards mainland Japan. However, the Japanese had not given up. They were fighting back with a fury rivaled by none. In sea battles, there were specialized Japanese pilots that would fly their planes straight into the American ships in a suicidal act called kamikaze, translating to divine wind. And when Japanese foot troops were caught, they would find any way to kill themselves, to keep their country's information secure, honor intact, and so there could be no prisoners of war. This absolute and total refusal to surrender led to the fear of land invasion. The Japanese were in a tight spot and could only negotiate surrender at that point. The details are disputed, but a theory suggests that the Japanese were planning to surrender at this point. Even some high-ranking US officials believed this and were totally against what would soon occur surrounding the bomb. As Ronald Takagi puts it in his fantastic book Hiroshima, seriously give it a read, quote, MacArthur considered the bomb completely unnecessary from a military point of view. He believed that the Japanese were practically defeated. Although there was a chance that the Japanese were willing and even planning to surrender, the tensions hadn't faded away. This is why, on July 26, 1945, the US sent a letter to the Japanese government ordering them to surrender unconditionally and on the spot. If they failed to meet the ultimatum, there would be no peace. Scared at the removal of power from their central government, the Japanese declined. The US now had a frightening decision to make. They could command a land invasion directly into Japan, risking millions of innocent troops on both sides and countless millions of innocent bystanders on the process, with no guarantee of success. Or they could use their last resort. A project, hidden from most, named after the city it was founded in. They could use the research from the Manhattan Project. The bomb that came from the Manhattan Project had potential, both military and destructive. But it was the most surefire way to save the most American, and yes, Japanese lives. The decision was made, dates were set, and prayers were said for the innocent people of Japan. The cities that were chosen due to their production of military supplies, not their population. The US, however, only made this decision begrudgingly, knowing that it was the best option for their troops and millions of innocents. So they acted on those feelings, and in the intervening days between the decision and the drop, American pilots dropped hundreds of thousands of leaflets in the Japanese cities, warning them of a round of bombing. There was no atomic bomb or even a superpowered weapon mentioned, but they gave them a heads up of impending doom. The first round of these leaflets, titled the LeMay leaflets, were dropped just days before the bombing. Read this carefully, as it may save your life or the life of a relative or friend. In the next few days, some or all cities named on the reverse side will be destroyed by American bombs. These cities contain military installations and workshops or factories which produce military goods. We are determined to destroy all of the tools of the military clique which they are using to prolong these useless war. But, unfortunately, bombs have no eyes. So, in accordance with American humanitarian policies, the American Air Force, which does not wish to injure innocent people, now gives you a warning to evacuate the cities named and save your lives. It is unknown how many people took these seriously, but I sincerely hope that there were people that did and managed to escape the nearing destruction. August 6, 1945, the Enola Gay, a B-29 model air bomber, takes off from an island in the Pacific. Still dark, it travels for hours to make it to Hiroshima, and at 8:15, the bomb doors open and out falls Little Boy. When it detonates over Hiroshima just minutes later, it explodes with a power of 15,000 tons of TNT, which can be translated to 15 kilotons. This small bomb, just 10 feet long, had the power to level a city. The power released wasn't even 100% of its potential either. When the bomb exploded, only a small amount of uranium-235 actually went supercritical. The vast majority was destroyed by the explosion, resulting from a tiny percent. And as this explosion happened, 15 kilotons of power spread out fast. The fireball, which was a quarter of a mile in diameter, rose to 10,000 degrees Fahrenheit. Everybody within a few kilometers was turned to ash, and the resulting shockwave wiped out anything within a few dozen kilometers. It is estimated that 66 to 80,000 people were killed that day, and anyone introduced to the radiation died in the following years. That wasn't all though. 3 days later, on the 9th of August, Fat Man was set to drop on Kokura City. But with heavy clouds that day, the bomber was forced to go to target number 3, Nagasaki. Fat Man delivered just about the same destruction, and it's estimated that 40 to 45,000 people died that day in Nagasaki. 6 days later, on the 15th of August, Japanese Emperor Hirohito announced his surrender to the US forces. And 18 days later, Emperor Hirohito met with General Douglas A. MacArthur on the naval ship, the USS Missouri. Here, several Japanese ambassadors signed the document which labeled a formal surrender of the Japanese Empire to the United States. After the Japanese had signed, General MacArthur, followed by Fleet Admiral Chester W. Nimitz, signed as the Supreme Commander and representative for the Navy of the United States, respectively. Then, 8 other military leaders from the Allied countries signed the document to solidify the surrender as official. And with that, the war in the Pacific was over. Over the next few years, the US would see Japan through a tough time and help it rebuild. And we can see today that Japan is one of the world's best economies due to this intervention. All of this, because of 2 bombs dropped 76 years ago, forced them into it.